Rent Podcast. I am your host, Patty Rose. I have two guests today. The guests are technologist and business person Jim Cupples and journeyman carpenter and overall badass Anthony Reed. Guys, welcome to the show.
Hi, Patty.
Thanks for having me.
So this is really cool. This is only the second live stream, so bear with us if we have to work out some kinks still. Last week we had a little bit of an echo, and I think that we've got that figured out. We are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you'd like to donate to the podcast or learn more or listen to previous episodes, you can go to STRPOD.com. So we're going to talk today. This episode is being called the Springfield Ballot Drop-Off Panel Discussion. I wanted to have you two guys on because behind the scenes, we've been talking a lot running up to this election Tuesday. It is too late to mail in your ballot. So we're going to talk today about how to drop off your ballot by Tuesday, May 17th. But come on, people, don't wait until Tuesday. You can drop it off this weekend. I'm going to include a Dropbox locator in the show notes, but it's really easy to find if you just Google ballot Dropbox locations, Oregon or Lane County, then you'll find places to drop off your ballot. I always drop my ballot off at Splash when I go to the dog park. So there's one there. Where's a ballot Dropbox that you guys like to use?
The only other one in Springfield is at the library, I believe.
That's right. Yep. Right underneath the library downtown.
But it's easy to locate if you don't live in Springfield, if you live in Eugene or whatnot. So they're all over the place. But yeah, Tuesday, May 17th, and we're going to talk about that a lot, is the last day to drop it off. But don't wait until then. So like I said, you guys have been working a lot behind the scenes, canvassing primarily in Springfield. I'm going to start with you, Anthony. What has that experience been like?
Well, wet lately, and other than that, a lot of people, I'm only able to canvass on Saturdays. That's the only availability I have, and a lot of people are gone, so it's going through a lot of doors, covering a lot of ground, finding those people that are willing to open the door and have a conversation with you. Pleasantly, I've actually run into a lot of people who are like, already voted for Joe, so thanks,
Yeah.
but there's been some times where you run into people who are less than open to talking about it. In fact, last time I went canvassing last week, and I ran into a guy who was like, oh, well, I go to church with David. I said, okay, cool. So, it's not about anything about anybody personally, it's about who can do the job better, and kind of went through the list of what Joe's done. And after talking to the guy for about 5 or 10 minutes, he came around and goes, you know what? I think I can go vote for Joe. So, I mean,
Wow.
that was a great experience for me. We went as, with the carpenters. I went with local 271 out with a bunch of carpenters, and so I had a guy with me that never canvassed before, so it was kind of cool to get him out there, get him. He'd recently joined the union and was just wanting to be involved, so it was kind of inspiring me to get out there and train him up a little bit.
Wow, that's cool. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I've been lucky because I also can do weeknights, and weeknights are great for canvassing, right? Like 5 to 7 are the golden hours where you have like the adults or 18-year-olds who are voting home. So I think I was out there this week on Monday and Tuesday nights. Both of those went well. We hit a lot of doors. But then again, when you're knocking on doors, it all depends upon what doors you're knocking on and how well it goes, right? So when you're going through canvassing, some people on this podcast are probably really familiar with this, and some may not be, but usually have this little app. A lot of the times we use NGP Van, and it's showing you the houses. And depending upon where you are on the campaign is depending upon where you're knocking on the doors most friendly to you, or sometimes you expand if you have more resources and stuff. So we've been hitting kind of like true blue Democrat houses lately, and those usually go pretty well for Joe. And then whenever I'm walking, if I see anyone in the driveway, and I talk to them. So I kind of go a little bit off script too, and I'll meet, Republicans, unaffiliated people, whoever. So yeah, you get a good cross section of everyone that way. But the doors I've knocked on so far have been good for the candidate that I'm supporting, Joe Berney, in this. And then the other thing that I really take away from, and this is the best part about canvassing, you get to really hear what people want, right? Like, we don't have a lot of polls in this community or anything. So you can talk to me and Anthony for your polls, because we'll tell you, we've talked to now hundreds of people. So the roundabouts on Main Street have driven people insane, right? Like that's, you know what? If I hadn't been knocking doors, I wouldn't be as familiar with that. I don't mind the roundabouts. I don't want to sound, that's not popular. Trust me, on a lot of people.
I know.
But knocking on doors, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing there's a lot of people that are talking about the roundabouts, specifically in the Joe Bernie race. Oh, they'll talk about Joe and when you're canvassing, you kind of have to have 3 things ready to talk about. I think Joe's done, at least 2 dozen good things, but I've got like my 3 things in the back pocket that you lay on people and stuff. And for me, that's like, wages. Joe did a great package, I think, with Senator Manning on collective bargaining wages and baking them into all the contracts. The patrician, I also think that was another huge thing. Joe, helping them get out of there. And then the other thing that I really think is easy to communicate to voters is Joe put the brakes on the indoor track that was going up in Glenwood that no one was really comfortable with, right? Except for like the small group of people that were pushing it forward. Yeah. So dialed all the way back, Patty. It's going well. I get to do weeknights, which is pretty nice. And the best part is hearing what our neighbors and everyone else is thinking.
Well, I appreciate what you guys do because I'm a precinct committee person, and I think you both are as well, or at least I know, Anthony, you are. And I should be doing more when it comes to canvassing, but I have a little bit of agoraphobia, especially with COVID still being around. And I don't know. I need to know, like you're saying, I need to be more prepared, and I'm getting closer and closer to having that confidence. And so, Jim, you're somebody that has really made me feel welcomed to the process. And I know that if I choose to go, I know that I can kind of take a step back and watch first. And so anybody that wants to become a precinct committee person to help out the Democratic Party, you can message me or message the podcast, and I can help you find out how. Because there's obviously on the ballot. I wrote your name in, Anthony, because I don't know if you are an official write-in. Because to be a write-in, you have to actually file. But I'm on the ballot in Springfield, and it was pretty interesting to see my name. This will be the second time that I've done this, but I haven't done what they really wanted everyone to do. But I do my own way. I do the podcast, and I elevate voices that way. But I do just appreciate both of you and what you do behind the scenes. And I've learned so much from you, and I look forward to learning more. Some of these races have gotten kind of ugly, and I'm going to start with you on this one again, Jim. I'm kind of new to this, and I think, Anthony, it's safe to say that you would consider yourself fairly new to this Springfield politics. Jim, but you've been paying attention for a long time. Is this the most civic participation that you've seen, first of all?
No, wow. I think like, I think like 2020 people were pretty fired up, right?
I guess I'm still, that's the same. That's the same time. I'm still that I'd say from 16 until now, I would consider like now.
Yeah. Well, in 2008, people were crazy for Obama. I remember knocking on doors for him, and it was like everybody, right? There was no arguments. I mean, Springfield, Eugene, doesn't matter where you go, he was crushing it. So
and that had to have done well down ballot, for Democrats. That had to have done well. I know there was a lot of Republicans that voted for Obama, though.
Yeah, I wish I kind of could recall that, Patty, because I don't really remember that. I mean, back then, we had the balance on the county commissioners were always in the Republican favor. It was really the tail wagging the dog in Lane County where we had this huge Democrat registration advantage, and the Republicans would just they would usually hold 3 out of the 5 seats, and then we flipped that and we got it back to 3 out of 5 on the Democrat side, and it's up again. But the people are pretty charged up right now. But yeah, back in 2020, because it was like with the removal of Trump election, it felt like, right, the larger context. And then in 2008, the Obama energy was really there as well. I'm trying to recall 2010. I mean, I knock doors, right, guys? Like I don't do too much volunteering, but I'll knock doors. So I should keep a diary and like recall what it's like in each of these, because I'm trying to remember what the 2010 National Tea Party election was like, and I really don't remember. But people are definitely they're this campaign's, or there have been a couple elections right now that have gotten negative. So things are a little bit more active.
Yeah, Anthony, what about you? I mean, watching as this has gotten a little bit uglier, you're somebody that I get a kick out of the way that you use social media to kind of engage with people of the opposition party. We'll just say that, somebody like Joe Pishinari, you've been very vocal on things that he said, and I sometimes bring in humor to it. But what are your thoughts on how this has kind of gotten ugly? Is that a surprise to you, or is that kind of what you would expect with how tight these races seem to be?
Just knowing Joe Bernie personally, it's a little bit of a surprise. I think that, of course, like most candidates that I support, he would like to run, a clean campaign, if you will, and stay out of the weeds. But when you have an opponent who's willing to go below the belt and even straight up lie about you, you kind of have to fire back. There has to be some kind of get the record straight, or just say, okay, hey, if that's where you want to go with it, buddy, you got a little more skeletons in your closet than I do. So if we have to take it there, then we got to take it there. And I think that Joe understands the importance of this election. I mean, not just in his race, but across the board, from governor all the way down in Oregon. This is a huge election cycle. And, I've talked with Joe, and he wouldn't even be running again if David Lovell wasn't running, but he knows what's at stake. And we need Joe.
David Lovell, was he an early entry for, I don't know. Cause I know that, let's talk a little bit about the Mark Molina Victoria Doyle race for city council. I know that Mark Molina he's jumping at the bits. He wants to get more and more involved. And this is something that he's so passionate about, to get on city council. And Victoria Doyle, from what I understand, was very late to have her name thrown out. And there was some people that Mark has talked a lot about how he believes that they were pushing to have, they're like, nope, we don't want Mark. And I love Mark Molina. Mark Molina is an incredible human being, and is so awesome about bridging the divide, so much so that he had a sit-down interview, I don't know how long ago, with David Lovell, where he was praising him a lot, and I'm sure he regrets it now.
I don't know if he does regret it necessarily, because I've talked to other prominent figures in our community that have praised Lovell for his development. Now, that doesn't make him a good Blaine County commissioner. It makes him a good developer. But also, in part of his role as a developer, is he's taken money to help him develop that from a committee, I guess you'd call it, that he would be a part of as a commissioner, which is a huge,
conflict of interest.
Conflict of interest. I'm looking for. So that's the first thing that struck me, is knowing who David Lovell and the way and what he does in our community as a developer. That was the first thing that stood out to me, was, okay, this guy wants to get in and continue to develop his properties, through this avenue. So would I say Mark Molina regrets those support? No, it was a support for a completely different aspect to who David Lovell is.
I agree with that. And also, I think that Mark is really just trying to do something that I honestly don't do enough, is listen to people that he may disagree with and learn from them. And I think that that's really incredible, that he has really tried to, he wants to have bridges. Like I said, he really wants community to come together so that we can listen to each other and make compromises. I mean, he's been vehemently against the Main Street Safety Project, and I think it's because he listened to people that maybe I wouldn't sometimes. And so, I mean, I did an episode of the podcast about the Main Street Safety Project because Sean Van Gordon asked me to, and like you, Jim, I was like, I kind of like this idea because I like new roads, because I'm a skateboarder. I'm 40 now, but I grew up skating, so the only thing I care about is a smooth road. So no, but there's a lot of problems with it. But anyway, yeah, Mark Molina is great, but that's a tough race, and
going back to what you were saying about her getting in, I believe that Mark got in like one of the first days you could possibly file, and early. Victoria got in on one of the last, maybe even the last day you could possibly file. So I think that may have worked against Mark in the fact that he had 3 months or whatever of thinking he was running unopposed. Which probably didn't do him any favors. And then at the last minute, having somebody said, hey, look, this guy's been running unopposed for this long, hasn't put a lot out there. Let's throw an opponent at him, chuck some money at it, and see what we can get back.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. And so I believe that there's a lot of money in that race going, if you can't go anywhere without seeing Victoria's signs, right? Same with Lovell. They've thrown a ton of money at trying to get out in front of people, getting billboards, getting signs, getting, whatever they can do to just constantly be hitting you with that name. And hopefully, democracy works. When you can't buy an election, you actually have to have some policy and some experience and be willing to do what you need to do to fight for our community, right?
Yeah, we're pretty inundated at this point with different names and different billboards and signage and commercials. The commercials have been out of control because I watch a lot of basketball, so I've been watching a lot of live television because I know nowadays people stream. But that's the other thing is that I've been seeing people complain about Val Hoyle streams on YouTube. They're like, every time I watch a video, I got to see the same ad. And so I wonder if there's a trade-off. You know what I mean? Like if there's too much of it, because to some voters, we care about this stuff. So I would love to see everybody's campaign ads, even if there's no chance in hell I would support them, because I want to see what they're talking about, what they're doing. That's why I do this show, is so that I have an opportunity to, I cover other things than just politics, but man, for some people that are not as passionate, they see those ads and they're like, I will not vote for you. I don't care how good you might be. I'm so tired of seeing it. So there's such a balance on how to navigate that. It's kind of interesting.
There's a backlash. And then I think, there's two things that I think about with this. So I used to work for a political software company, and then you would just deal with people that were on the fence about running a lot. And one thing that was super duper common is if no one has filed, someone wants to get in and take that spot. They're afraid of losing. That is so universal among candidates. And then people will just sit back and look, and then if it's just one candidate or they think they're weak, as Anthony was mentioning, they jump in on that. We've got two races on city council. I believe we've got two where we have no candidates at all, which is crazy, right? Like, as whether it's the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, non-affiliateds, we are controlled by the boomerocracy, and that's who's coming back in those seats, right? We've got Steve Moe, who's a little bit older, and then Michelle Weber, who was a Republican until just a few years ago, has switched parties, and she's got the easiest path to city council I think I've ever seen, right? Yeah. Like, we didn't recruit anyone. There's no young person that was recruited to take that spot or run. That's a problem, right? And I'll just mention that and be the be pointing something out that we have to do better on. And then the other thing that we're talking about when it comes down to these candidates and kind of like the polarization that comes with it, and it's on the extremes and their ads and stuff. Yeah, those ads mean something. They're not always positive. I think there's a backlash, but the one place that there's never going to be a backlash is for the campaign managers that raise that funds and then put that money towards those ads, because they get a percentage of each one. So every time you see that Val Hoyle ad, maybe it does turn off a voter, but there's a little bit more money that goes into that campaign management staff. And that's something that we also have to talk about, right? Some of these campaigns, I think they could put that money a lot better spent knocking doors, doing things like that, but you just get inundated with ads during a Celtics live stream game, right? Like that's not working. But you know what? That works on the money side. And let's not, we weren't pretending it. So I'm not saying we were, but I just want to bring that front and center. This is politics. This is also money. People make a living on this. And we're talking about a lot of ads. That's someone's money. That's a campaign firm that raises up a lot of money, and they get paid every time one of those done. They get paid even more when people are shooting videos, because they're part of that video shoot, that expense they got a piece of, and everything else. Yeah. So that's why you see a lot of ads.
I'm a prime example of this cycle of how it's not necessarily the full story, because, I was on TV every time to tell, every commercial break with Andrew Kallick. And I honestly, I don't know if this is taboo to say, but I voted for Doyle Canning. So I am a huge fan of Doyle Canning. And so I really like Andrew. Don't get me wrong. If he wins this primary, I will support him fully in November. I will be knocking on doors. But Doyle was just closer to what I'm about. And so I was in his ad constantly, and I get all these calls and people are like, what's going on with that? He came to the barbershop. He's a customer. I told him the truth about who my support is for. But I do like him a lot. I think he's great. But it's just funny because people were like, Patrick, I saw you on the TV, and I was glad to do it. I was glad to do the ad, and whatnot, when he's shaking hands, talking to people, just canvassing and meeting the community. But I want to talk about one-sided information algorithms. Can we see the world through each other's eyes if we don't agree on facts? I guess, Anthony, I'll start with you.
I talk about this every chance I get. Whenever we talk about polarization in this world, I always come back to, like, you think about Facebook, Google, anything you use on the internet, you have these bias confirmation algorithms that every time you search something, it gives you more of that. So then it pushes us further and further apart, right? And so it's really hard to have a conversation with someone who's on that other far end, because the facts are different. For half of America, Joe Biden won the election. For half of America, it was stolen from Donald Trump. And those are facts on both ends. And you have to find a way to talk to people and agree on the facts. And it gets harder and harder all the time to do that with this, like you're saying, with the algorithms pushing us in different directions.
And that's the difficult thing, is because you say, and I don't disagree, but you say those are facts on both ends, but they're not. You know what I'm saying? Like,
depends on who you're asking.
That's the thing. Alternative facts, because there's only one truth. Well, there's only one fact. Truth, I think, we can get into semantics, but but yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, when it comes to elections, and I don't want to get hate mail, but like, how do you truly know as an average person that you can only trust your gut on that? But there's certain things that we'll disagree on that are like not debatable, that are facts, and it's just difficult. Now, COVID is something that I think it's impossible for somebody to have 100%. They know the truth. They know everything. They know how it started, where it came from, how it transmits. That's too difficult with something like COVID, so that one's a debatable thing, that I think that people's perceptions to all this new inundating information coming at us, it's understandable how people would, kind of process that differently. And it was constantly changing. But, I want to talk about Elon Musk and Twitter. I kind of been bringing it up a little bit because I think it's so massive. And Jim, you're a computer guy. I don't know about you. Use social media as well a lot. Are you on Twitter a lot?
I'm on Twitter. I'm more of an observer on Twitter. I don't use it too often. Every once in a while I'll pop off. I was talking about like California water shortages, so I'm not that exciting on Twitter, right?
Sure. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts in the big thing is that when one person can basically have a hostile takeover of an entire virtual public square, it raises some eyebrows, and it's not just about what he's going to do with it. It's the fact that he was able to. But I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Regarding Twitter, so prior to it, and I'm not the one who, is bringing this hot take out for the first time, but prior to the, Elon Musk potentially taking it over from, I think yesterday they said he was putting on hold for a little bit. But prior to that, right, like it's owned by what, like a big part of the Saudi investment family. We're not crazy about them. They killed, the journalist Khashoggi by whatever, like circular sawing him up or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, another big owner of that of Twitter right now is BlackRock, who buy up all these homes across the country, and then they just rent them out and everything. So I don't know. Like, it's not like we're moving from a benevolent power overseeing Twitter to a less benevolent one. Like, will it change? Yeah. Is there a huge importance that we haven't really, come to terms with regarding the public square, the internet, and, whether there should be either at a utility or something else? Like, those are other questions. But I wasn't so uncomfortable with Elon Musk. And I'm not an Elon Musk fan. I have a lot of issues with him, and I like Tesla for some things. And Tesla's terrible on the labor side. Anthony, you and I will
we're gonna get to
rail on that, right?
Yeah.
But as far as like Elon Musk taking it over and what he said he wanted to do, I was like, well, okay, like let's see how it plays out. So you guys are probably a little more passionate about that than I am. And that's only because it's coming from like not a great bunch of people to another person who's debatable.
I just think it's so important for people. It's so important for people to understand that social media does not protect your free speech. It's a private business. These businesses, these platforms, and it's our responsibility to know things. It's like even with the Russian memes, it's like, is that against the law? Like, for them to say things that are false. I mean, we're seeing it in these local campaigns with lies being spread, and you have to combat that with the right information, and you have to really do the legwork to get the word out there of the truth. But it's so difficult. we got to move on. I just wanted to talk on that a little bit because we're in such a polarized society, and there's so many reasons, and I think it's just really important that we push through and try to find ways to kind of bring people together. Anthony, one of the things you wanted to talk about, and this is going to go back to kind of more of a local thing. I had mentioned in the opening that you are a journeyman carpenter, and you've taught me a lot in some of your rants about labor policies. And so I wanted to give you a chance to talk about the current candidates in our area and what the candidates have shown you as far as labor policies.
Yeah, first I'd like to call them passionate responses rather than rants there, Patty, if you don't mind.
That's fine. That's fine. Rant is a 4-letter word. That's fair.
Yeah. So as far as where I come from when I'm voting is, to be honest with you, I'm not so much a political entity as I am just a regular ass dude. And I'm a carpenter and I have a family and I have a truck payment and I have a house payment. And so I vote my paycheck for the most part, unless there's something completely egregious that I cannot abide by and within a candidate, I'm voting my paycheck. I'm voting who supports me, who supports my industry, who supports labor, who supports unions, who supports what I'm about. My wife's a teacher, so she's in a union. I'm a carpenter. I'm in a union. And I'm generally every day fighting for labor rights. And I tell everybody that'll listen, we're one piece of legislation away from losing any meaningful power within our unions, right? If we go right to a work state and people don't have to pay their dues, they say, hey, you don't have to pay to work. So people stop paying dues, unions lose their power, and now the contractors or whoever you're working for has all the power, right? And then we go back to working 12-hour days for straight time or whatever we'll have you. As far as local candidates go, when I'm out knocking doors, it's easy for me as a carpenter because if I'm knocking for Joe Burney, I can say, hey, like I told you guys, I'm not a political guy. I'm just a regular dude, but I'm a carpenter. And Joe Burney works hard for carpenters. In the bills that he's worked hard to pass with the prevailing wage laws, with apprenticeship utilization, these are things that I see a direct effect in my wallet. As far as I can support my family, as far as keeping local work local, so I don't have to drive to Portland to work. Because some company from Texas came in and took a contract here locally and brought their own workers with them, and they take their money back home and pay taxes back home. You know what I mean? So this keeps our money local. Now, if Joe Burney's willing to go through and get that stuff passed and work for us, I can go out in the rain and knock doors for a couple of hours, for this guy. So it's easy for me to say, hey, he works hard for me, I'm working hard for him, and I hope you guys will give him a chance to continue to work hard for everyone in Lane County.
No, and I'm so glad that you said that about how you're not a political guy, so to speak, but you vote your paycheck, because I think that that's something a lot of people can relate with. Jim, I want to hear what you have to say about what motivates your vote. As far as what is it that you find yourself kind of leaning towards when making that decision?
Yeah, I was a Teamster for 10 years. So like Anthony, like labor, the relationships between the candidates and labor mean a lot to me. And then outside of that, sometimes, all things are equal. It's unaddressed. And I'll look for the more environmentally friendly candidate, the candidate that's closer to Bernie, right? Like that's usual. He's kind of a national figure and you generally know what he's about. So I generally lean towards that. And then I 100% really keep in my mind that we're all good people in our own heads. And they could be like the worst candidate from my perspective, but they're not doing it to be evil, right? They're doing it because they have this other idea of how to make Springfield, Lane County, Oregon better. And I try to get that. I try to think about where is this person coming from that I don't understand, what they're doing. So for me, it's I go towards the Bernie candidate after labor. Environment is probably the next thing. My familiarity with them in the community, I've lived here since 2006 and been pretty active, the whole time in politics as far as just doing door knocking and low level Democratic Party stuff. So my familiarity comes with them a little bit. At the same time, let me reverse myself, because I think we are way obsessed, the Democratic Party, on credentialism and did you do this and did you do that and did you do this? And we've got to be more accepting of fresh faces with new ideas. So sometimes it's a little bit of me, knowing someone for 5, 6, 8 years and seeing them be like, oh, I'll throw a vote their way, and even speak on their behalf. But I should catch myself because, we've had a lot of the same ideas that bounce around in our party. And maybe it's even not the same ideas, but the ideas that actually get traction and move are often, very, very similar. So opening up to new candidates with different ideas, I think, is also really important. I've knocked doors for candidates that are Anthony. I had a blast knocking doors for you. First time candidate. It was so easy to volunteer for Anthony Reed's campaign. It was easy.
I was just going to bring that up because Anthony, talking about fresh faces and bringing new ideas, your run for city council or for school board, which was, I don't know if you want to call it unsuccessful, but you didn't win the seat. I was so about it because you were talking about pushing for, vocational training in high schools. And oh my gosh, that is absolutely what we need. Now I'm a barber, independent contractor barber. So you and I have talked about how I said, we were talking on the phone. I'm like, well, that's cool. All these union things that you talk about, but that benefits me zero, but that's not true. It's not true. And we were talking about it because for me, I, as an independent contractor, have the luxury of setting my prices. And unfortunately, with inflation, that gets higher. And so to get a haircut, it's more expensive. But at least I have that power that I can be like, this is what I'm worth, and I can charge that. And so I can kind of dictate how much my hourly rate is, and then the quality has to speak for itself, of course. But yeah, Anthony, I love what you were doing with pushing for vocational training, and I hope that that's something that you will continue in the future as far as a school board race, because I think that's the right place to start with that.
Yeah, the whole time, this whole podcast, I've been thinking just when Jim's talking about knocking doors and yakking at people that aren't necessarily on the list. I remember he did that for me, and when he talks about speaking up for people that that he feels he can get behind, he did that for me. So Jim, I want to thank you for your support in that. For Patty, I was telling Patty and Jim, maybe I can get your opinion on this, but it's a weird setup for barbers because they don't necessarily have anybody to bargain with other than, for instance, the people that they're selling their services to. But if you were to set your price at a certain, say $28 or $30, whatever it is for a haircut, now that may seem expensive, but I'm a journeyman carpenter for the union, and I can tell you right now, it's more expensive to hire me than to hire a non-union outfit, right? But you're getting what you pay for. You're going to get somebody who's well trained. We have the best apprenticeships out there. We have a drug-free workspace. We're on time. We're going to deliver under budget, And so, as far as the Barbers Union, the thing that you could collectively bargain with is insurance companies, and and having buying power with a large amount of barbers, where you could say, hey, we're going to charge 30, but we're all going to throw 5 at healthcare, right? And so you're all going to chip in that every haircut, or $4, whatever it is, so you can collectively bargain with that insurance company to maybe get you guys some coverage or some dental or whatever, whatever.
Maybe that's something down the road. Maybe that's something that we can work on. Try to see if we can get something started locally. Because I would be down. Now, I think sometimes being a barber is a lot like gig work or musicians, even, where you're not paying the person for the haircut, you're paying for their experience. You're not paying for that 25 minutes that they're in your chair. You're paying for the 20 years that they've learned how to any single texture that walks through the door, you're ready to cut it. And cowlicks and all that. We can be here for days. But yeah, I mean, like you're saying, he's as a journeyman carpenter, there's a reason that title is, you've got a lot of experience and a lot of advanced training and those kind of things. And so that's really important to how much you're paying for the quality of work that you're getting. I want to change gears real quick and talk a little bit about the governor race, because this is something that for me has been something I haven't really put a ton of focus into. I don't really have any thoughts on the Republican candidates. There's 19 of them. I do know that I'm obligated to mention Thomas Huda's name every episode. And Thomas Huda interviewed GOP candidate Tim McLeod on the Broken Class podcast. And I highly recommend you listen to that. There's 19 candidates. It's wild. So I don't even know if we'll get into that. But what is your guys' take? We'll start with you, Jim, on the governor race. And then also Betsy Johnson, the third party candidate, could be really throwing a wrench in that. I know a lot of Republicans that are going to support her. So yeah, what is your take on the governor's race?
It's the most interesting race in the country, because you have a pretty unpopular outgoing governor, Kate Brown. I think she might be nationally the lowest sitting governor in popularity with the thing.
Even more unpopular than a guy that was repealed, even though he was kept in, with Gavin Newsom. Yeah.
There's, and some of that, isn't deserved. Some of that is deserved. So I think like what we have with, for this governor's race between Tina Kotek, Tobias Reed, Patrick Starnes, and coming out on the Democrat side, I think, that's interesting on its own. It's a little bit milquetoast. Patrick Starnes is probably the only thing that really mixes it up among the Dem. I know there's more candidates on the Dem side, but Tobias Reed and Tina Kotek running aren't very big shocks, and they're running pretty straightforward. Right, Tobias Reed being an outsider is funny, right? He's like a city treasurer, but when you compare him to Tina Kotek, who's been in office for 20 years, I guess you are an outsider. But the most interesting thing that puts us on the map is Betsy Johnson running unaffiliated. The second largest party in this or second largest political designation in this state is non-affiliated, second only to the Democrats, and then come the Republicans. I have been waiting for someone to use this strategy. I am so disappointed it's Betsy Johnson. I've known Betsy Johnson for a long time, not only through her in the state Senate, but through people that I know in Astoria. I don't have anything good to say about Betsy Johnson. Betsy Johnson was a terrible Democrat, absolutely terrible. We never, ever, ever disciplined her. And what happened? Well, now we have a Frankenstein, someone that we've created, given her a whole lot of power, a platform, and now you've got someone that may shake this race out of your control, which should be a layup.
I think that she has a huge chance.
She not only has a chance herself, but she will suck off more Democrat votes from our base than she's gonna, I think, pull from the Republicans. So it's a chaos maker. And the worst part is, it wasn't like this was a great person and it was like, oh darn, X went their own way, and we could have been a better party. We should have drummed Betsy Johnson out of this party years ago for being anti-environment, anti-labor. She's terrible. She's been terrible. She's a bully also in the state capitol as far as like asking for things with our state workers. But at the same time, kudos to Betsy for her jumping in the race as a third party. She's going to create a lot of chaos. She's got $2 million from Phil Knight and a whole bunch of other rich timber and corporate people that it's going to shake it up. And if she gets elected, it will be the worst. We need to take this as a lesson and say, if we're a party, what are our principles? When people run afoul of them, what do we do? And we don't do a lot. We've got our own sitting Democrats that are endorsing Betsy Johnson. Lee Beyer, our very own state senator, has endorsed Betsy Johnson.
I wonder if it's just because of how unpopular Kate Brown has been. Okay. And that there's this, Tina Kotek, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be like, she is Kate Brown. Like that's the way that they're going to campaign it. You know what I mean? For the Republican side. I wonder if there's support going towards Betsy Johnson because people want to distance themselves from this perceived far left, whatever, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Even inside the Democratic Party. Sometimes I want to do that, as a human being. I'm not running for anything ever, so, but that's an interesting take. I say, wow, not because I don't agree. I don't know a lot about her. So I'm glad that you were here to talk about it, and we will have time. She's going to be around. Now I have to ask something. She's running in the independent party is a party, right? I mean, there's a non-affiliated voter, correct? Mm-hmm. So she's running a primary right now. So there's people that are registered as an independent. Is that's who's voting for Betsy Johnson? Is that correct? Or she's probably not running opposed. I don't know.
No, I believe that Betsy Johnson is running unaffiliated, not with the non-affiliated voter. Party. Okay. Yeah, not with the Independence Party. She's running unaffiliated, and with the way our numbers are in this state, we've always been vulnerable for that. We're vulnerable for that in Springfield. We should be way more inviting to unaffiliated voters, recognizing why they're unaffiliated and how we can reach them. But I believe Betsy is not running with the Independence Party. Betsy is unaffiliated. You will see her on the ballots in November.
And that's interesting because there's people that are going to be frustrated that don't understand the process, that are like, why is she not on my ballot? I'm not affiliate, or whatever. And I mean, I don't know if non-affiliated voters, they're still voting in the primary, correct? I mean, do they get a ballot? It's just
no, they don't. Unaffiliated voters, no, they don't get to vote in ours, and obviously we're tied into, it's a closed primary in Oregon, right? So Democrats.
I'm kind of interested in an open primary, but there is issues when you have such polarization in certain areas that I think that in the November election, because turnout in the midterms is usually smaller, that if you have a dominant blue or dominant red state, that in the general election, you'll have two candidates from the party that's dominant and not, so that's a reason for ranked choice voting. And that is a conversation we can have at a different day, or star voting, which I've covered a lot. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm curious what Anthony's take on Betsy Johnson is,
yeah,
and the whole race as well. I mean, I rambled a little bit there.
No, you're
good. I'm psyched up because I have not liked Betsy Johnson maybe like 8 or 10 years. I've been well aware of Betsy Johnson and disliked her as being part of her party.
Anthony, what's your take?
I was over here smirking just because Patty and I talk, and I've heard him talk positively about Betsy Johnson, and to hear you come in and just railroad her, and I'm looking at Patty just going, oh man, like, oh geez, I didn't know. That was kind of that's why I was over here smirking. But no, I stated how I vote. I vote my paycheck, and I vote with labor. And the thing about Tina Kotek, and you can say, she's established or whatever. I talked to my political organizer, Matt Swanson, for the Pacific Northwest Regional Council of Carpenters, like the big guy for the 6 Western states. And I said, hey, can you send me over some information so that I have some like hard stuff on what's been done for us? Dude, I've got 5 pages double-sided of things Tina Kotek has done that's positive for Oregon that I was like, okay, I can never bring all that up. I got a short list of things that are good for our unions and for labor. The prevailing wage, Senate Bill 493, the prevailing wage law, paid sick leave for union guys, which is something we've never had. So that's a huge deal. The thing that, Senate Bill 420, which also Senator Manning and Joe Berney, helped work on, saying that collective bargaining agreements are legal, like putting it on the books. Labor standards for renewable energy projects. I know you're going to like that. So there's money for enforcement, making sure Bully is funded enough that they can go after the bad actors. So and I know, Patty, we've talked a little bit about, or you've heard me rant about, having Bully come in. And that's one thing that's also important right now. Christina Stevenson running for the head of, or for labor
commissioner.
Labor commissioner. So, the head of Bully is that she would continue the work that Val's done. Essentially, before Val came in, Bully would say, hey, you guys have been really cheating your employees out of wages. You've been misclassifying them, and you didn't pay your overtime. If you just pay the back pay, then we won't levy any fines against you. And so as a contractor, you go, hey, check it out. I don't pay them the right wages. I cheat. If I get away with it, I make a ton of money. If I don't, then I just pay them what I was supposed to in the first place. How is that going to be effective at enforcing any kind of wage theft? It's actually like allowing wage theft.
The old ask for forgiveness, not permission model.
Yeah, exactly. So, and Val's actually changed that to where they're levying fines, or you could actually suspend contractor's license. It's got some teeth. So Bully's coming back for the worker. Another thing she's changed, on Val is that the website, making it to where you can go on the website and file a complaint. You used to have to get a paper document, fill it out. It was very cumbersome to try to file a complaint. They didn't want you filing complaints. Now it's easy. It's easy to do. And for people that work in labor, that's huge. It's very important because especially if you're not in a union, I can just call my rep and be like, hey, Jeff, check this out. This guy's cheating me down here. They've been working us overtime and not paying us. They're there in an instant. And they're like, hey, you are signatory to this contract. We're going to have a problem. For people that don't have that contract, it's important to have an entity like Bully to come down on them and say, hey, you got to pay. And actually, Julie Fahey, Val, there's several people involved, but they've actually got a pool of money now. The Oregon state government has a pool of money they can use to just pay the employees when they get cheated, pay them. And then they go after the contractor and say, hey, you owe us. But that way, your employees, these guys, the workers are not waiting for their money. I can't wait to feed my kids. I can't wait to feed my dogs. I can't wait to put gas in my truck to get to work. I need that money now.
Yeah.
So
right.
when I say I vote my paycheck, I mean, these are the kind of things I'm talking about, things that mean a lot to people on the ground, boots on the ground.
Yeah. All right, guys. So one more topic, and then we're going to get out of here. This is a funny topic for three men to talk about, but the Bands Off Our Bodies march in DC and across the country, and today in Washington, DC, NBC reported that they're expecting 170,000 people to be in DC for a women's rights march. And then I think tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I believe that the rally in Eugene starts at 2 p.m. at the Federal Building. Is that correct? Do you guys know? Okay, that's right.
Yeah, they're going to meet at the Federal Building an hour before the march, which I believe that they're actually going to meet at the EMU on campus at 3 p.m. Yeah. So it'll start at the Wayne Morse Federal Building. Val Hoyle might be there. Senator James Manning, I think, might be there. Julie Fahey might be there. So they're going to speak, and then it'll go to their EMU, and then they'll go.
Pretty sure there's going to be a Patty Rose appearance. I think I'm going to be going to this one. This is something that I feel deeply, strongly about. That something has to be done. It's really scary what we're seeing right now with what's happening with the Supreme Court, because it's not only is it bad because of reproductive rights for women and healthcare rights for women. It's bad because it could lead to the gay marriage being repealed. It could lead to a lot of stuff. So we'll see. It's going to be a really challenging time for our country, and I worry about when some of this stuff, when you start taking away people's rights, there's going to be some hell to pay.
Hey Patrick, I don't know if you saw. I shared an article this morning about minority rule. And that's exactly what we're seeing with this. And this is terrible. But you've got presidents who are elected by the minority appointing judges who now make decisions like this for the majority. Yeah. So, if you think about it, it's been what, Jim, and maybe you can correct me, but I don't think that every Republican president in the last 20 years has been voted in by the minority.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you have 19 candidates for governor in Oregon, for example, for the Republicans, so the person that wins the primary is going to have 11 votes.
Well, and then when the minority, when the minority candidates win, and then they get into office, and then they appoint judges to change voting registration and voting rules. So you have voter suppression, they redistrict, you have gerrymandering, and so basically get in with the minority vote and then make it so it's impossible to get rid of them. And when they do get rid of them, they've already greased the path to get back into office as a minority leader, right?
Yeah. So everybody get out there today, support women's healthcare rights. Like I said, 2 p.m. at the Federal Building in Eugene. You said 3 p.m. at the EMU. Yep. Okay. Do you guys have closing thoughts? Jim, I'll start with you. Closing thoughts?
Well, just, on really quick on Roe v. Wade, it's terrible. We're going to go through like a painful process as a country as we figure a lot of stuff out. And it stinks because it's so easily inflamed, and it gets really far away from the substance and really quick to emotions and manipulating people. And that's what I see. And I just want to make one other comment on that. Like lately, the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas has spoken out about how the institution has been degraded or something. And to me, that was somewhat infuriating, because I'm like, you people have watched all these institutions around the United States crumble, through some of your own efforts and in very, very, malicious and deceptive ways. And now that it hits the Supreme Court, we need the fainting couch because there's protest right outside a judge. These people have loved protest, right? I mean, outside Planned Parenthood, they can't get enough of protest. And then when it comes to a judge's house, it's just completely different. So it is upsetting. I encourage everyone that wants to see sensible, legislation on the federal level to, of course, go down to it. Closing thoughts on this: get out there and vote. It doesn't happen a lot, only every 2 years. I am a Democrat, but my mom is a Fox News Republican, Trump lover. I still love my mom, right? And so I talk to everyone, unaffiliated voters, anyone. If y'all ever want to talk, please reach out to me, and I'm happy to. But vote, knock doors for who you like, and try to listen to each other.
Yeah, thank you. Anthony Reed, closing thoughts.
Yeah, I agreed. You got to get out. You got to get out and vote. And for people that think that politics don't matter, or that that's just stuff that happens whether I'm involved or not. For a long time of my younger life was me. I think that's something that just happens, and it happens passively, right? And now, as a union member, like I said, one piece of legislation takes away all our power. As you see now, if you're not paying attention to what's going on in the government, they're going to make sure that it's their support. What they want supported is going to be supported, even if it's the minority. It doesn't represent democratic values. You got to pay attention. You got to get out there and vote, and it starts at the lowest levels. So make sure you get your ballots in. Make sure you get out there, like Jim said, support the people that are fighting for you, because if they don't get voted in, there's not much they can do about it.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Jenny Davidson. I'm going to read her comment. Thank you for getting out there and talking to folks. It really makes a difference. Thank you for leaving your comment. And then to Jerry Allen Reed, thank you for supporting women's rights and unions. Thank you so much for your comment. This is the cool thing about these live streams, is that it gives me a chance to have interaction from the audience members as well. And we'll get the word out. And she just added another one. You're going to love this. Anthony Reed for office. It doesn't even matter what office.
Yeah, that's my mom. So.
Oh, well,
Cool. and the other comments from my wife. So, you're welcome. I'll keep bringing comments for you.
Hey, this is a small local podcast, and your mom and your wife represent a huge portion of Springfield. It's a small town. So Jim, Cupples, and Anthony Reed, thank you both so much. I want to say how much I appreciate not only you being here on the podcast, but also your friendship behind the scenes. I'm learning a lot from both of you, and I really look forward to, the coming years and where we see this thing go. I'm stoked to do this show. I know that it's a small thing and it doesn't have a huge reach, but it's growing, and I'm making some big moves behind the scenes that I'll be able to announce more about later. So thank you both so much for doing this. For the audio listeners, I'm not going to be able to play the songs anymore on the shows, on the streams. So only for the audio listeners, because YouTube doesn't like copywritten material. And even though it's my own music, sometimes it's still copywritten. So for the audio listeners, we'll be ending it with a song. But for everyone else, the stream's going to end. But thanks, guys. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And you guys can hang tight real quick. But yeah, hey, thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Spent the Rent podcast. Go to strpod.com. All right, guys.